All right, welcome to another edition of OTEC TV. I'm Michael Howe, Communication Specialist for Oregon Trail Electric, and with me is Anthony Bailey, the Manager of Accounting and Finance here at OTEC. Thanks for joining us today, Anthony.
Thank you for having me.
And today we have an interesting topic, somewhat complicated at times, but an interesting topic on residential rates. And if you're watching this, hopefully you've read the article in the July 2010 edition of Ruralite, where we're comparing OTEC's residential rates. And Anthony, just looking at the comparison real briefly, it looks like we are fairly competitive.
Yeah, we are. In fact, we're at or below the investor owns, which I think speaks really well of our management.
Right. So we'll take a look at that chart, and but I think that something we get a lot of questions about is not really how our rates compare today, though it's good to know that as a starting point, but what rates are going to look like in the future. We've had some indications from our wholesale power supplier, the Bonneville Power Administration, that we may be facing another rate increase soon.
October of 2011.
October of 2011. And so you're the numbers guy, so can you run us through why we might be seeing that and what we might expect?
Sure.
Okay.
First of all, as most of you know, Bonneville is a very heavily hydro-based system.
Mm-hmm.
And that being the case, when there's no water, there's no power.
All right.
And so I want to put up this chart to show you water since 1929, and you can see that now where this year for 2010 they're projecting 67% of normal.
Wow. Wow. So how does that compare over the years, with 67%?
I'll show you. In the next graph that I'm going to display, it shows that this is the 5th worst year on record.
Wow.
Now, that may not be as clear as what I will take and show you now. If we take that one more stage and we overlay that first graph
Okay.
with a 10-year annual modified net revenues of Bonneville, and you kind of follow the water year with the margins and losses for Bonneville,
Mm-hmm.
you'll see that how goes the water, so goes the revenues. And in this case, with being the 5th worst year on record, we're not too much different than 2000 or 2000 when the water was 2001 when the water was the 2nd worst water year on record.
Okay. What happened that year?
Wholesale rates went up 53%,
Wow.
and we had a retail increase of 30%.
Wow. Are we expecting something like that again?
No, not anywhere near that bad. They're
Well, that's good.
they're talking somewhere between 10 and 20% in 2011 at this point.
And that's for wholesale.
Correct.
So that's what OTEC will pay, and then obviously the board and the management will face a decision on if and how to
Implement that.
implement that. Yes. So, so Bonneville's revenue goes down. Now they're basically a government entity. Are they required basically to break even?
They have to have a certain probability of making their treasury payments,
Okay.
and that's how their rates are determined by a probability model on being able to pay their debt.
Okay. All right. So this rate increase you're talking about will be for Tier 1 power? Or,
Yes.
Or all of it?
It'll be for Tier 1.
Tier 1. And our members have hopefully heard us talk about Tier 1 and Tier 2 power, but Tier 2 power is what?
Okay, the Bonneville system is at capacity as far as what they can generate today.
Okay.
And any new power that we have to go out and buy after 2011 will be Tier 2 power, which means we have to go out in the marketplace and buy it. We can buy that either through Bonneville or through some third-party marketer.
Right.
And as that gets melded in with our power costs, that will drive rates up.
What's the long-term impact or outlook for rates?
Well, you're going to probably see a steady increase in rates over time, because the more Tier 2 power we bring into the mix, the more that will have an effect on the overall rate of the individual.
Okay.
Conservation is a good way to try to minimize your own bill, and it's what we want everybody to try to do, but that isn't going to solve the entire problem because you can't conserve your way into a load balance. It's just not in the cards.
Okay. What about the renewable energy? Does that have an impact on rates?
Yeah, it does. Generally, the cost to buy renewable energy is double or triple what we pay for Bonneville Tier 1 power today. If you go out in the marketplace and you buy the best alternative to Bonneville, it's probably 50% higher than Bonneville's rate. So it's the least cost alternative at 50% higher than what we're paying for base load.
Okay.
And so the more of it you're able to buy versus renewable energy, the lower the rates will stay over time.
Okay. And we're required to start buying more and more
Yes.
renewable energy, right?
By law, we have to buy 5% of our energy from renewables by the year 2025.
Okay. Now, there are other utilities that have to buy a higher percentage, so they'll probably, and we've already started to see their rates go up, and they've
Right.
attributed it to renewable energy. So, it looks like there's, between the low water year, just basic operating costs of the Bonneville Power Administration, other rate pressures based on conservation and renewables, it looks like we're gonna start seeing a,
You're going to see a steady increase in rates, and there's really not a lot we can do about it, but we do work with our lobbyists and stuff to try to minimize the rate effect and slow down cost increases from Bonneville.
okay?
But it's kind of like getting in front of a freight train. You can only slow it down so long.
And, let's talk real quick about the recession, because that's had an impact on sort of how we do business with not filling certain positions that have become vacant, that type of thing, in an attempt to minimize our costs and not necessarily have to pass those on to our members as best we can. But we have an interesting way of looking at the recession. I was hoping you could sort of describe this chart.
This chart that I've just placed in front of you is our large power sales. And if you look at this from 1995 to 2008, you can see that we started in the neighborhood of about 183 million kilowatt hours. And in 2009, we're down to 103 million kilowatt hours, or 56% of where we were in 1995.
Dropped off 80 million.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, when you look at the recession in 2007, we went from 162 million approximately down to that 103 million in 2 years.
So the biggest drop has just been in the last 2 to 3 years.
Yes, with plant closures in some of our larger industrials.
Does that have a impact on residential rates, since that's really what we're looking at? Can that add pressure?
It can, because there are margins in that rate class. And, you know, we've made several moves over the last few years to try to minimize that effect by reducing the margins within that rate class so that when we lost them, it would not drive rates up in other classes.
Okay. So this was just sort of one look at one aspect of rates, and rates are actually kind of complicated, I think, in rate design. Thank goodness we have someone like Anthony on board to help explain it, and we will see future articles in Ruralite and in the media trying to explain the rate issue, and you'll see terms like decoupling, which we'll talk about down the road, and be sure to watch for lots of information on the upcoming Bonneville Power Administration rate increase. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you.